Shalom Israel. Before I start, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bahara Kadash, double honors to the elders and apostles in Israel who rule and teach well, to the Akim on the highways and byways and those pushing videos in truth and sincerity, to the brothers and sisters in the truth. Now, one of the prophecies, one of the main prophecies still to come is the Motb, and you tell people that this is actually the RFID chip. Now, the thing with that is there's various foundations that are being laid for this to come into place, for it to come into play, and the chip will give you access to all of these various things. Now, some of the things they're doing is like the internet, the smart cities, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Bodies, the BCI, which is what we're going to look at today, a video. Now, I did a lesson on those a while back. It seems like they're improving on the BCI, which is brain-computer interface. So I just want to show this video here. The video is 14 minutes. We're going to play most of it, so there ain't going to be much talking, and then just go through a few scriptures at the end to end out. So I just want to play this, man. A lot of people don't believe that the MOTB is dealing with RFID chip, and these are just foundational things which is being put in place. And when you look at what this is meant to be able to help you to do, it sounds good, but that's the same with Esau. Everything sounds good at the start, and then once you're suckered in, then the real plan or the real use is then implemented. So I just want to play this video here.
Elon Musk's brain implant company Neuralink is the billionaire entrepreneur's venture into an experimental medical industry known as brain-computer interface, or BCI. And in the 6 years since Neuralink was founded, there has been massive progress generated in the field of BCI. Some of that coming from Neuralink themselves, with their work implanting devices into pigs and monkeys, including one now infamous monkey who can play Pong using nothing but his thoughts thanks to the digital telepathy enabled by BCI technology. And now, the next generation of brain-computer interface is going to human trials for the first time in the United States. However, the first BCI procedure to be approved by the FDA is not going to be a Neuralink. It's a device called the Stentrode from a competing private company called Synchron. And knowing our usual audience, some of you might find that news upsetting. But I'm going to quickly turn that around and say that this is a great thing for literally everyone, Neuralink and Elon Musk included, because competition is the best thing to push an industry forward. Strong competition and a variety of products on the market will accelerate innovation and new discoveries. So, let's get into the current state of the BCI industry and how Neuralink fits into the broader picture. So, obviously, when Neuralink was founded in 2016, there was a ton of fanfare and media attention around the company, and that was due in...
Just to add, this video is on coming from a channel called the Telsa Space. It says new brain implant begins human trials, Neuralink update, and the date of this video is 23rd of July 2022. So I just want to give them a plug for using their video for educational purposes.
Ton of fanfare and media attention around the company. So, obviously, when Neuralink was founded in 2016, there was a ton of fanfare and media attention around the company. And that was due entirely to the person behind the project, Elon Musk. The news lit up with stories about how Elon Musk was going to put implants in people's brains that would cure all diseases, make you smarter, let you control a computer with your brain, and even interface with an artificial intelligence to become a human-machine hybrid super being. It was all a bit extra. That's just how things go with Elon. He doesn't have a filter. He just says all the wild, fantastical things that are in his brain, and the media reports it. So Elon Musk did not invent the brain-computer interface. It's been around for a surprisingly long time. The only problem is that between the year 2016 and the mid-90s, there's been virtually zero progress made at improving the methodology and implementation of.
So ESO's been trying to do these things for a long time, but it's only through technology improvement that they're able to advance on these things.
BCI. So that's where Neuralink comes in. It's a modern approach to an existing technology, doing the exact same thing that Tesla did for the automotive industry. They didn't invent the electric car, but they did package that technology into a product that worked exceptionally well and solved a problem that was inherent with the previous design. The concept behind the brain-computer interface is pretty simple. Your brain is essentially just a ball of soggy electric meat, and it controls the rest of your body by generating specific electrical signals and then firing them out through your nerves and into your organs and muscles. Those electric pulses are like the programming language of the human body. Your brain is sending command prompts through your spinal cord, but sometimes that connection between the brain and body gets broken, either by a physical injury or degenerative disease. So BCI can function like a bridge for those electrical signals to bypass the broken connection. Existing BCI technology can be split into two philosophies: invasive and non-invasive. You've probably seen non-invasive BCIs. It's like a weird hat with a ton of electrode sensors all over it. This can read the electrical signals from the brain, but it doesn't do a very good job. There's an entire skull in between the sensors and the neurons, so it's no surprise that it isn't very effective. It's like trying to listen to a concert from outside the arena. You might get the thump of the bass notes, but you won't hear the vocals. So, to get a good connection to the brain, we need to go invasive with our BCI, and that's where things get gruesome. The current industry standard for invasive BCI is something called the Utah array. It's a square computer chip with a whole ton of spikes coming out of it. I'll give you one guess where those spikes are going. Yeah, into the brain. So what they do is cut out a chunk of your skull, spike the Utah array into the outer layer of your brain, and then attach a miniature computing device directly onto the top of your head that connects to the array on one end and has a giant wire coming out the other end. Typically, they will have to do this twice, so you'd have two spikes in the brain and two computer boxes with wires coming out the top of your head. It's brutal, but very effective. The spikes can quickly and easily read the electrical signals from the cortex region of the brain, which are then read by the computer and translated into computer code. And that process allows a person with the brain implant to control an electronic device with their brain. They can control a robotic limb like it was their own arm, or control a computer to move a mouse or type on a key.
And this is how you know that ESO is that mad scientist. I remember back in like the 80s, you used to get a lot of mad scientist films like Frankenstein and all of these things there. And this is ESO, you know. That's who he is, man, that mad scientist.
Board. The downside to this method is that it is limited to use only in medical research environments. People can't go about their lives with all of this stuff coming out of their heads. They can't even maintain this in their own homes. Also, because the Utah array is just a bunch of tiny nails in the surface of your brain, the body is going to want to reject that foreign object. It's going to get inflamed and form scar tissue around the puncture that will eventually render the device useless. So now we enter the next generation of BCI technology, currently being led by startup companies like Neuralink and Synchron. Like we said off the top, Synchron is the first to reach full human trials. They initially began testing in Australia with a group of 4 patients receiving their BCI implant. Apparently, Australia has looser regulations about what you can put into people's brains. And just last year, Synchron was given the go-ahead by the FDA to commence human testing in the United States. The first U.S. patient just received their Stentrode implant and will be the first of 6 people involved in a $10 million study funded by National Institutes of Health. To understand why Synchron crossed the threshold before Neuralink, we can look at the design of their implant. The stentrode is named after a common medical device called a stent. This is just a long, thin, flexible tube that doctors can insert into a patient's blood vessel. Stents are used all the time for a number of procedures, mostly involving the heart. If you have a blocked or narrowed artery, the doctor will insert a stent tube to hold it open for you so that blood can flow and you don't have a heart attack. So, the stentrode is actually what it sounds like, a stent combined with a cluster of electrodes. The Synchron procedure is to insert the stent with a catheter into the patient's jugular vein and run it all the way up into a blood vessel that is nestled within the motor cortex of the brain. When they pull back the catheter tube, the hollow wire mesh of the stentrode will expand out and interface with the walls of the blood vessel, and the wire at the other end of the stentrode is connected into a very small computer device that is implanted inside the patient's chest cavity. If this sounds at all familiar, that's just because this is virtually the exact same procedure as implanting a pacemaker. They're just running the wire into the brain instead of into the heart. The implanted computer device will then connect with the rest of the system via Bluetooth, either paired to a computer or even just a smartphone. The beauty of the Synchron procedure is that there will be nothing sticking out of the person. There will be no visible sign that they have an implant in their brain. The system can be used anywhere. The surgery can be done in any hospital setting in just a couple of hours, and most importantly, there is no need to open the person's skull or damage their brain tissue. The first patient to receive stentrode in America is a person suffering from ALS, who has no ability to move their body or even speak. Thanks to the Synchron device, this person is now able to use a computer and communicate by text just by thinking. The only downside to the Synchron is that it is only inside a blood vessel that runs through the brain. The electrode is not actually inside the cortex tissue and physically interfacing with the neurons. So the signal coming through the stentrode is limited. It can't match the bandwidth of the Utah array. So Synchron is definitely solving many problems, but they're still not creating a whole solution. And that is where Neuralink comes in. Their Link device brings the best.
So, like I said, the ESO, all they're doing now is improving on their methods, and over time, will be fully, fully plugged up for ESO to implement his Motb. But these things are being passed. These things are being passed off as something good, and if you're paralyzed in some way, and this can give you movement to that part of the body that's paralyzed, it's a good thing. But like I said, these things always start off as it's there to help you until the real agenda is pushed through.
Of both worlds, from the traditional Utah array and the modern, solving many problems, but they're still not creating a whole solution. And that is where Neuralink comes in. Their Link device brings the best of both worlds from the traditional Utah array and the modern stentrode, and they take that capability to an even higher level. So, much like the Utah array, the Neuralink does require the removal of some skull material. You're gonna have another hole in your head, unfortunately. But then instead of just spiking a tiny bed of nails into the brain, Neuralink uses a robotic sewing machine to carefully and accurately insert incredibly fine and flexible electrode wires into the outer cortex layer. They just go in a couple of millimeters. And this way, the robot can place the electrode directly into the neuron that they want to read, going straight to the source, maximum bandwidth. And each Link device will have about 1,000 of these tiny wires. So there is an absolutely massive amount of signal coming out of the brain. And then the computer device that's attached to the electrode wires is so small that it can fit perfectly inside the new hollow void of your skull and sit flush with the bone. That way, they can just fold the skin back over and sew you up. Once the hair
good and jolly.
Hair grows back in, there would be no visible sign that you have a computer in your skull that's hardwired into your brain. The same as the Stentrode, the link device would pair via Bluetooth with a computer or smartphone that would read the signals created in the brain and translate them into computer commands. So, while the Stentrode uses a very familiar and well-tested medical procedure to handle the implanting of the electrodes, Neuralink is proposing an entirely unprecedented kind of robotic brain surgery. No one's ever had a robotic sewing machine stitch wires into a human brain before. And that likely means that Neuralink is going to need to present a very thorough and well-tested proposal to the FDA in order to gain their approval for human testing. We know that Neuralink are doing their current device testing in pigs and monkeys. We also know that this hasn't always ended well for the monkey. In many cases, the monkeys who were operated on were either previously deceased at the time of the operation or were so near death that they were euthanized immediately after the procedure. Those monkey deaths were planned and are a regular part of testing any medical device. In other cases, some monkeys did die because of infections or complications directly related to the Neuralink surgery. And that sucks. But that is how we learn new things about science and medicine, by first testing the idea on animals. So, I do want to say thank you to the monkeys for your sacrifice. I'm sure you would have preferred to not be killed by a brain implant experiment, but your death.
Yeah, but that's what I'm gonna play. He's so dirty. But yeah, like I said, this is just another part of uh, the Motb, which if we take these things, what does the scripture say? Revelation. Like I say in the chip itself, RFID, it will give you access to these things. Remember, they said it's Bluetooth. So at some point they'll be able to program these things, program you. So you can't do what you want. You have to do what they say. Because ultimately, with the Motb, it's going to bring you into a form of servitude where you've got no choice but to serve them. And this is the whole point of this now, where you're going to have to make the choice whether you're going to want to serve the Most High or serve Esau. Before I go there, could have been this out. The Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. Well, the idea itself ain't new. Deuteronomy 15. Uh, so this is when you got a servant, and it's time to release the servant. It says, and so you're meant to release the servant, and if the servant says this, Deuteronomy 15 and 16, and it shall be, if he say unto thee, I will not go away from thee, because he loveth thee in thine house, because he is well with thee. And this is what you're saying when you take this Motb. You are well with Esau. You love him. It says, then thou shalt take an awl and thrust it through his ear unto the door, and he shall be thy servant forever. Yeah, your servant. You're showing the Most High who you want to serve, and also unto thy maidservant thou shalt do likewise. Yeah. So when you come to Revelation 13:16, it says, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And that's you now showing Esau or Slack, showing the Most High who you want to serve. Yeah. And that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Revelation 14 and 9. It says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever, and they shall have no rest day nor night. We worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. So this is what we need to be doing, being patient. It says, here are they that keep the commandments of the Most High. So we have to be keeping his commandments and the faith of Yahweh Shai. And part of that commandment is not to take that mark when it comes along. So let me quickly see if I can find something. Yeah, so this was a video I did over a year ago. It says IoT, Internet of Things, Internet Bodies, BCI, Smart Cities on your mark. Yeah, check that out. Give you a little bit more information on some of the other things which I put in place. And also, if you go to the Elders channel, GMS Fear the Most High 7, bar, I can find it. Go to the Elders channel, subscribe, and just go through his videos. The Elder has numerous videos touching the other things that Esau is implementing so that he can roll out his Motb, digital ID rollout. Did some mock up there. And if I can find any off the top just now. Biometrics again, Motb, digital slavery for Motb, famine and the mark, Motb and biometrics. Yeah, there's numerous. So yeah, hopefully this was edifying. With that, I'm going to close out. Give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Wahara Kakadash, Kwame Shalom.